Hello, I'm Bay Mud, and as usual, my hands will do the talking while my voice is up here. Today, we are looking at the 61-key Vox Continental reissue made by Korg around 2017 as part of a growing series where I dig into gear I have a soft spot for that is otherwise pretty much maligned. In fact, you may have already seen a previous installment where I discussed my love for the Studio Logic Sledge, for example. Long story short, Korg released a reissue of the classic Vox Continental transistor combo organ, but reviews were mixed and it didn't last long. So what went wrong and who was this for? Quick disclaimer, I'm just doing this for fun and bought this Vox Continental reissue with my own money secondhand a while back. This won't be a comprehensive demo or a tutorial, more of an overview and discussion with some examples. Did you know Korg had bought Vox? I only found that out when I saw Korg's branding on the power supply. Apparently that happened in 1992, so I'm a bit out of the loop there. In any case, this line of Continental reissues, which included 61 and 73 key versions as far as I know, was released around 2017 or so, but you could have fooled me as I don't recall hearing anything about this at all back then, which we could probably file under the what went wrong part of the discussion. Basically, it seems like Korg took some digital emulations of classic organ sounds, combined them with a selection of bread and butter piano, e-piano, and synth presets, and crammed it all into a shell evoking the Continental's classic aesthetic, with some added kitsch like this silly bulldog. Oh, and let's not forget a rare appearance by the infamous New Tube for some added crunch. Though eagle-eyed viewers will immediately notice the keys are normal and not the inverted black-white of the original, which apparently was a big complaint upon release, as inverted keys were a huge part of the original's aesthetic. So I don't see why they wouldn't have done that, but, you know, who knows? Maybe they had a collection of bulk key beds they had to use up. Before I get ahead of myself, let's quickly go over the main features of the reissue and how it differs from the original Vox Continental. As I mentioned, the original was a classic transistor combo organ, but combo is taken lightly here, so to speak, as it was actually still much bigger and heavier than the reissue. It had two organ voices, reed or flute, I believe, and physical drawbars for the footings. Now, of course, we're talking about the classic single keyboard version that has become iconic. You can tell just by looking at the reissue that there's more going on here. Physical drawbars have been replaced by multi-purpose touchpads, and there are now 4 sound sections accessed and combined by these 4 buttons. The organ section has emulations of the original Vox Continental, which I can't speak to the accuracy of, but people have said it sounds good. There are also other classic combo organs represented here as well. But you've also got separate sections for electric piano, piano, and key/layer, which is full of synths, brass, basses, and more. 2 of these 4 sections can be split or layered at once, which is easy to do. For example, just press the 2 sections you want to layer or use the split button to select the split point. There are also some standard effects: chorus, phaser, flanger, compression, drive, and wah, and a separate section for delay and reverb. Let's turn a bunch of this stuff on. Just as a quick example, all of this then goes through the New Tube-powered valve drive and dynamics section. Dynamics adds velocity sensitivity, and valve drive gives a little extra crunch and turns this light on. Your sound selections, including splits and layers as well as effects, but not valve drive or dynamic settings, can be saved in one of 64 available scenes. That may sound like not a lot of room, but there were actually fewer slots available at launch, which we'll talk about later. I had a hard time finding reliable price sources, but I did see a listing at a local Canadian retailer for the 61 key version at about 2,000 Canadian new with a stand, which I don't have. However, I think that was after a significant price drop right before they discontinued them, as some sources I've seen suggested they were priced higher than a Nord Electro 6 at the time of release, which seems zany to me for reasons we'll get into. But let's start with the positives. I'm no expert on the authenticity of the organ emulations here, but most folks seem to agree they're pretty good. And the e-pianos and other sounds sound good to me. I also enjoy the feel of the semi-weighted waterfall keybed, though unfortunately there is no aftertouch support. The addition of the key layer section gives some sonic versatility, as does the ability to split and layer the sounds together, which was only added to all sound sets after a firmware update, which we'll get into. The interface is simple, and things are generally easy to dial in, as there are no menus to dive into, though there are a few easy to forget key combos for things like changing the delay type. But things are pretty straightforward, which is nice, especially if you're using this gigging in a live scenario. Speaking of, you could cover a lot of ground gigging with one of these. Of course, it kind of goes without saying that your satisfaction with all of this will largely depend on how much you actually paid for one. So what went wrong? Well, I have to imagine the price was too high upon release, as I'm not sure why you'd choose this over a Nord Electro 6, which came out around the same time for the same money, but is arguably more powerful. Or you could have gone cheaper and picked up someone's Electro 5 they were offloading to upgrade to a 6 and saved yourself some money as well. Also, some key features like the aforementioned ability to split the keyboard for all sound types or save more than 16 scenes were missing at launch, and much like my beloved Sledge, a 2.0 firmware release was needed to patch those gaps, but that came about a year or so later, so that's never a great first impression. Personally, I also find the touchpads a bit finicky. They're okay, but I don't always find I can dial them in as accurately as I want. Of course, my main theory is that Korg just banked too hard on general nostalgia for the Vox Continental, but that classic aesthetic couldn't justify the price, especially if you didn't make the keys black. But I digress. So who was this reissue for? I expect Korg assumed it would be snapped up by lovers of the original Continental, but they've added so many non-Vox Continental features, it's sometimes hard to remember that's what's buried under here in the beginning, aside from the very obvious physical reminders. However, it's still not as complex as its contemporaries, though I do like the simplicity of options and appreciate the panel layout. I'd say if you had an older Nord Electro and wanted an upgrade to be able to split or layer the keyboard, for example, but couldn't justify the thousands of dollars in the way Nord drip feeds their features, this could be a good option if you can get a hold of one cheap. Personally, I took a chance on the Continental when I saw one come up used as a replacement for a Nord Electro 3 back when I had more of a use for a stage keyboard, which I really don't anymore, because the Electro 3 couldn't split keys at all aside from the organ section. And to get that feature in the Electro line, I would have had to jump up, I think, to about the 5, which meant we're talking thousands of dollars again. I also got my Continental for cheaper than what a used Electro 3 goes for, so it worked out very well for me as kind of a swap. I can see feeling a bit put out if you spent a couple $1,000s on one of these, but at the right price, it is super fun with a good versatility of sounds and enough effects to keep things interesting. As always, your mileage may vary. I've seen some people even take the Bulldog logo off. So what do you think? Have you owned the reissue Continental? Do you still have one? And if so, are you still happy with it? It's pretty cool. There are some really good things about it that I like quite a bit. And then there's some weird things or interesting decisions. And you can tell there's a lot of banking on nostalgia here in terms of the aesthetic and everything. But it is a pretty cool instrument for the right price if it does what you need. And as I've said, I don't really have a use for a stage keyboard as much as I used to anymore, but it is still fun to noodle on occasionally. So that's kind of what I do with it now. In any case, there is no shortage in my studio of weird or maligned gear that I happen to have a soft spot for, so expect more stuff like this. If you have any suggestions for something I should check out, I'm all ears in the comments. In the meantime, I'm just going to have fun with the Vox Continental.